Well, build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers Week at Hibs with Lee Spirits. I'm Matty.
Hello, I'm Colin.
Evening, I'm John.
And I'm delighted to say we're also joined by BBC's Tom English. Tom, how are you doing this evening?
I'm very well. I suspect I'm marginally better than you guys after the derby.
Aye.
But we can talk about that and the gross injustice of it all.
We shall. We'll come on to that and the many injustices that we face against that. But before we sort of get into the nuts and bolts of the derby, Tom, just would you mind giving us a wee bit of background on yourself? Like, how did you end up becoming such a, I suppose, prominent voice in Scottish football?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure how I know myself. Well, like, you know, journalism, they say getting into journalism is 90% luck and 10% ability. And I think that's right. And I got very lucky that I joined the Sunday Times as a kind of trainee messenger in 1991 in London. And I got a series of lucky breaks, moved to Scotland in 92. It was supposed to be for 3 months as a kind of part of my trainee scheme, but they relaunched the whole newspaper in Scotland while I was there, and they had a new sports section. And I was literally the only one in a small department who knew anything about sport. So immediately I became the sports editor and the main sports writer. Well, in fact, the only sports writer. So I was thrown in at the deep end, but it was brilliant. So I spent 4 years in Scotland from 92 to 96. I then went back to Ireland for 9 years, and then came back to Scotland with the Scotsman for 10 years from 2005. And then I joined the BBC full-time in 2014. So, you know, fortunate, Matty, you know, fortunate to get the breaks. And not everyone gets those breaks, especially now, because the media game is brutally tough these days. So yeah, so most of my career, journalism career, has been spent in Scotland. You know?
Did you start doing the rugby, Tom, or was it the football you came over first, or was it just everything since you were?
It was football first. Football, completely my first love. I'm a Liverpool. I was playing football as a 5-year-old. My mother tells me this. I was a 5-year-old playing football in the street, and I fell over and I tore a hole in the knee in my trousers. And she got a Liverpool patch to patch up the hole in my trousers. So from the age of 5, I was a Liverpool fan. You know? And I played kids football in Limerick, played junior football in Limerick, played for my school and the college and stuff like that. And it was only years later I live within earshot, or the family home was in earshot of Thomond Park where Munster play, you know. But I never went to go and see Munster. It was all football. I'm a big Limerick United fan because going to Liverpool really wasn't in our budget. So Limerick United was my team. So it was all football until, you know, as my sporting love and as my journalistic love, it was all football until I went back to Ireland in 1998. Then it's only then that I started writing about rugby.
What did you make of Scottish football when you kind of came over and were slap bang in the middle of it? Was it as bonkers as we think it might appear to outsiders?
Well, I was kind of I was very young, you know. I was early 21, 22 maybe. Hadn't a clue. I'd never been to Scotland before. So I was just kind of surviving, you know, probably surviving on bolshiness, you know, and brass neck. But the whole Celtic story, the Fergus McCann stuff was rampant at that stage. That was a good meaty one for me to get into. Rangers were running amok. I remember going to see Hibs quite a few times, interviewing Alec Miller quite a few times. But it was a kind of, I wasn't aware then of, you know, the craziness of the sport, really. I was just trying to get through, just trying to enjoy it and learn about it and interview as many people as I could. And it was different because there was no kind of restrictions then. You could interview pretty much anybody you wanted, you know. And again, I was lucky that I had really supportive colleagues in Scotland at that time who kind of looked after me. You know, I've a huge amount to be grateful for. You know,
has that changed over the years? The sort of access that you get to clubs. We occasionally get interviews with Hibs players or staff, and it's all very controlled by the clubs. I think the clubs try to control the media a lot more these days. Have you noticed a difference over the years?
Oh, massive. So when I went away when I left Scotland in '96, all I remember was one-on-one interviews were a scoosh, no problem. Celtic was quite tricky because they were under siege at that time, completely under siege. But all the other clubs, you can get one-on-one interviews, no problem. You know, that's what I love doing. I love sitting down with people and still do, and talking through their careers. You know. But when I came back then in 2005, everything had changed, you know, and it was weird actually. A lot of the stadiums had changed, so everything that I remember before had changed physically. A lot of the grounds looked very, very different, and certainly the media landscape had changed. The Old Firm had become the Old Firm media had taken over. It's very hard to get interviews. Hearts, Hibs, the same, although nowhere near as territorial over their players as Celtic and Rangers were. But it was harder, not impossible, but harder, and very, very different. You know, very, very different.
And how's it been with social media? That sort of changing the landscape of journalism as well.
Yeah, it's changed everything completely. You know, most stories now, if you have a story, it breaks on social media first, and you know, because I'm on a show very often on the radio, which demands opinions, you're going to upset somebody or a lot of people a lot of the time. Because if your team is not doing well and I criticize them, I'm going to upset people, and they will come for you on social media. So numerous times over the years, I've thought, look, you know what, Twitter, it's just not worth it, right? It's just not worth it. I'm going to come off it, but you never do, because it's such a vital source of information, breaking news. It all happens there, you know, to the detriment of newspapers. I think newspapers are in serious trouble in Scotland, because social media has kind of taken over, and there's a lot of obsession with social media amongst the proprietors of these newspapers now.
Do you ever get the urge to just throw in a wee grenade on Twitter? Invite some of that carnage.
Well, do you know what? I wouldn't say I don't think people won't believe me. I know people won't believe me, but I don't think I have very rarely, put it this, very, very rarely deliberately thrown in a grenade. But, you know, countless times I've been accused of throwing in a grenade. So if a team gets hammered and I say that was a dismal, pitiful performance, someone will interpret that as me throwing in a grenade. You know?
Tom, was the recent one not Neil Warnock? Did you not say something about Neil Warnock and
on
the radio about?
Yeah. So, like, I wouldn't be a massive Neil Warnock fan, and I can't particularly say why, but it wasn't even so much. So I tweeted this thing this is always stuck in my head. This thing that he'd said a number of years ago, when he was talking about Brexit, and he was saying, "Oh, we're better off out of it. To hell with the rest of the world," right? So it was a headline which I retweeted when he was appointed interim manager of Aberdeen. Nothing to do with his views on Brexit. I couldn't care less. It was this comment, which I always thought, God, that's a terrible thing to say. To hell with the rest of the world, right? But all the Aberdeen fans chose to interpret it as, oh, I was criticizing his political views. I mean, I am not political in any way, or at least I wouldn't foist my political opinions on anybody else. I just thought it was a really mean-spirited thing to say, and that caused a bit of social media carnage for a while.
They'll agree with you now, though. They'll back you.
Well, yeah. Yeah, like, and to be honest, probably my biggest problem was Warnock. With Warnock wasn't actually Warnock; it was the fawning coverage that Warnock commanded. It was the box office. It's never going to be so. Well, it is box office, but not in the way people thought it would be. And like everyone said, oh, he's had X number of promotions and he's managed these, but nobody talked about all the relegations and the sackings. Nobody talked about the controversies and the other side of Neil Warnock's career. Nobody mentioned that. And I just thought this coverage is really one-sided and a bit cheerleading, And I just that's where I was coming from, really,
Why do you think your sports journalist colleagues are in such awe of Neil Warnock?
I wouldn't say I just think it's easy copy, It's and he plays the game, Warnock. He plays the game brilliantly. I mean, I said it on the radio on the other night that he's like, he thought he could turn up and throw funnies at journalists like they were performing seals, and then everything would be fine. So, and to an extent he could, because the coverage was, Neil Warnock, great for our game. Great for our game, really. I mean, like, I just didn't get it. I thought it's based purely on the fact that he gives good copy, great one-liners, is liable to take a flamethrower to the SPFL or the SFA or referees or VAR or other managers, other teams, and that's good for business,
What did you make of
if you're winning? So if you're winning, you get away with it. But when you're getting beat like that, it just looks ridiculous. The manslaughter stuff and all that against us. All these
just embarrassing, ridiculous deflection tactics all over the place.
Well, that maybe answers the question I was going to ask, which was, what did you make of his manslaughter comments in regards to David Marshall punching the ball clear of Miovski?
I cringed, actually. I cringed when he came out with it. I cringed numerous times, actually, since he came here. I cringed at the Horizon comparisons with VAR, the post office scandal. I don't think there was any need to equate VAR to the Horizon, which has ruined lives. I just thought that was kind of inappropriate.
Yeah.
And the manslaughter thing, come on, give me a break, But it's a great, again, But what was the headline? You look at the coverage after the 3-3 game with Motherwell, right? In which he picked the most ridiculous team. It was Motherwell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So he picked the most ridiculous starting team, like outrageous. And I was looking at the Aberdeen fans' stuff on social media before the game kicked off, and they were having kittens about this team that Warnock has picked, and they were predicting mayhem. And sure enough, mayhem is what they got. But the headlines afterwards were him having to go at VAR and a couple of other one-liners that he got. I just thought, hang on a second. Warnock is kind of getting away with this here. What about the team? What about the team he picked to begin with? And then he goes, when we were 3-0 down, that's when you saw a Neil Warnock team. When we came back from 3-3. What about the team that went down 3-0? Was that not a Neil Warnock team? But he kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm getting up my high horse here, lads, but that stuff doesn't sit well when managers or anybody else kind of play in the media for fools, and some, not all, but some in the media happy to be treated like fools.
My favourite thing about the manslaughter comment was somebody tweeted us after and said, "What an idiot! In Scotland, it's culpable homicide."
Yeah. I mean, it's just and especially with. I mean, I'm not just saying it because I'm on the pod with you guys, but some of the decisions that went against Hibs that night. Well,
Well, that's probably a good segue into the next bit. We'll talk a wee bit about the derby last night. So after we finish recording this, we'll go and do a full episode on on the derby. And, but if you were joining us for that, Tom, you'd be here till about midnight. So we'll take care of that afterwards. But just sort of briefly, what were your views on the game last night?
I thought Hibs were 2 or 3 goals better than Hearts were. The stats would. I mean, I'm watching the game in the studio, and it's it's obvious to the eye. But then you look at the stats, and it just reinforces it. Just not taking chances, Yeah. And a penalty given against you, which was never a penalty. I said that on the radio. But even allowing for that, you should have won the game. You're the better team, and you should have won the game. The upside of it is that, I mean, I haven't had a clue what to make of Hibs pretty much all season, right? Up and down. I'm looking at them going, okay, I can see something building here. And then the next week you go and you get hammered by St. Mirren or whatever it might be. What I'm looking at now, I'm thinking Mariah Welsh has made a big difference. He looks like a real player to me. And I like that solidity that he brings and the energy that he brings. And you look at the team when he's come into it, and it's only very recently, but it's improved. It's improved immediately. You've played Hearts and Celtic in recent weeks, 2 of the top 3, and you haven't conceded a goal from play against either of them. And this is a team that was giving away the most ridiculous goals, right? Scoring goals, you obviously would like to score more during the course of the season, but scoring goals hasn't been your big issue, has it? It's been conceding these ridiculous goals. Yeah. So if now this defense is beginning to settle and become harder to score against, I think you got the players there to kick on.
What have you made of Nick Montgomery, Hibs?
Like I've never interviewed him, so I don't really kind of have an insight on him. But it's been a tough old grind for him, up until the recent victory. What was it? No wins in 8, was it?
League wins.
It was league wins. So it was tough, And I think at times, and my kind of analysis is just based on his pre-match, post-match stuff in the papers to the written lads. He seems, really passionate for the job, but I'm thinking you got to start winning games here, and it's a lot, and I know he's had a lot to complain about in terms of VAR and referees. There's been maybe a little bit too much of that. I know he's had cause, but it's just sometimes I think there's maybe a little bit too much of that. If you're winning games, you can complain the house down. It's not a problem. But if you're losing games or drawing games that you should be winning, that stuff, I'm not sure it plays that well. But, maybe he's hit on something now, because that team last night and the team that played against Celtic, I know you lost the game, 2 penalties, but they were good performances. And, plenty to go on. You look at the derby, Hearts had 2 shots on target, Hibs had 6. You look at the game against Celtic, Hibs had 4 shots on target, Celtic had 3. Equally the win against Dundee, Hibs had 9 shots on target, Dundee had 1. You won the game 2-1. You should be winning that game 3 and 4-1.
Yeah.
But maybe that will come. I
think it's made a big difference to Hibs getting that January window out of the way. It was 7 players in, 7 out, but
yeah, it's a lot.
1 went back to Bournemouth, so 6 players in, and we do look a different team now. What do you reckon of Hibs' chances of top 6 or better?
Like that performance, and I think you need more goals. Fente, I quite like Fente, but Fente, what has he got? 1 goal in his last 11, which was a penalty. 2 in 21. Good player. Mm-hmm. But imagine if you had a Shankland. Maybe you should splurge the Bill Foley money on Shankland or Majovsky. Because if you had someone of that ilk,
Can you imagine the headlines?
Now that would be fun, eh? That would be fun. Let's float that. Hibs are in for Shankland.
That would be. If you could plant that in the press on our behalf, that would be phenomenal.
Imagine if I tweeted that. Oh my god!
That might finish.
That might finish me on Twitter for good. But if you had that kind of prolific centre forward, I think Hibs would be in a much better place. Top six, like I don't get too. Obviously, you want to be in the top six, right? Of course you do. But like, there's this thing about the top six. Will Hibs make the top six? Will Aberdeen make the top six? Of course, Hibs and Aberdeen should be making the top six. Two of the biggest clubs in the country. Should be. There's no entitlement here. There's no divine right. But I don't think it's an achievement for Hibs to make the top six. It's not. Big club. Should be there every year. Mm-hmm. So I think they have a chance of making the top six. But I don't think it's a cause for wholesale celebration. I think Hibs should have bigger aspirations than that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've said that's sort of for the word go. But then it looked like at one point in the season, looked like we might be looking down the way and sort of getting pulled into a relegation battle.
Top six sounds all right then.
Yeah. That's the other side of it. I know.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the game last night sprung on that penalty decision we were speaking about before we started recording about the standard of refereeing and the VAR as well. So last night, ironically, VAR did what it was supposed to do and took Clancy over to have another look, and incredibly still, after watching it again, decided it was a penalty. How do you reconcile a decision like that?
I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I can.
How do you think, Kevin, or we're just going with Clancy, the Neil Lennon?
Just Clancy, we're with Lennon route,
yeah. How will Clancy justify it? Because normally, one of my complaints about the rules is, or the way it's done is, they'll always find like a reason to justify a decision. Oh, I wasn't looking, he was leaning, it was t-shirt lines and all these other things they make up as they go to justify the decision. How can you justify that one? Like, how will he try and, when he goes to his boss today and say, there's a foul because, what could it be?
I think they already know that they made a mistake. I mean, they have to, right? I think it was an obvious blunder. And there's been a series of obvious blunders. And I think a lot of the referees, a lot of the VARs, Crawford Allen, head of referees, I think there's a crisis of confidence there now. Because every week brings, like, it's not even the marginal ones. The marginal ones, you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly the ones that they get right, you say, that was a good call. But the ones, the VAR was brought in for the clear and obvious ones, right? And there is no excuse for getting the clear and obvious ones wrong. This is why these clubs are spending the money that they're spending. Some of these clubs down towards the bottom of the league, say a Livingston or whatever, they can't afford to spend this money on VAR, but they're still spending it. If it's not producing better, more accurate results for the clear and obvious ones, then what is the point of it? Because football has given up an awful lot. And we speak about this on the show a lot. And I was pro-VAR. I was absolutely pro-VAR. And I'm not pro-VAR. I've done a complete U-turn on that. Because it just takes away. And a lot of people will say, well, we told you it would. And they were right. And I was wrong. It's taken away too much of the match day experience for the fans. Football without fans is nothing. Do you remember that? I mean, that's just, those are empty words now, right? Totally empty words. It's a cliche. The football fan experience has been diminished. Excuse me. It's diminished by VAR. Nobody knows what's going on half the time. There's no respect paid to the fans, and we're not getting enough accurate decisions. And that one in the derby was a really, really, really poor decision. Really poor. That shouldn't be happening.
No. When you see a decision like that,
excuses away. That's it. We've taken all the excuses away, haven't we? The noise of the crowd, not only getting to see it once, they can't slow it down. They're like all that, and he had to go and stand in the Hearts crowd, of course, to actually make the decision. Like they were all keeping him right. Where their VAR monitor is incredible, but how he's got to see it in slow motion. And the guy's actually ever was on VAR. It was somebody with Alan Muir,
Alan Muir.
Who's also gave horrendous decisions against us in the
We've got a list.
past. He's even told them, "You've got this wrong. Change it." That's effectively what he's done, and he still went, "Nah." It's absolutely.
I mean, I felt for the Hibs fans. I felt for the Hibs players. I felt for Nick Montgomery, because that would have been, if you'd won that game. When was the last time you won a Tynecastle? It's been quite a while, right? 2019, was it?
2019, I think.
2019, yeah. That would have been a seismic win and could have kick-started the final run-in the season for you. It's just, it's grim, but, I mean, you live it, right? And I live it, but I live it in a different context to you. So I'm looking at all of these clubs and I'm seeing decisions given against a lot of them. And a lot of clubs complaining about clear and obvious ones that weren't given or were given and shouldn't have been given. And the whole thing is a mess. And I think a lot of it goes back to Crawford Allen is a good man, right? But I'm just not sure he's in the right movie here. I think there should be a change in the summer, bring in a new head of referees from outside of Scotland, so has no baggage, none at all, no affiliation with any club whatsoever. Bring somebody in, very experienced, and hope that things get better. That's all you can do, right?
When you say that, I just had vision. I can't remember the referee's name, but the referee that used to be in the Premier League with the dark hair, a sort of stout guy that gives all the "We Are the People," and he's like bigger. Or I wish I could remember his name. He was like, "I've got a prominent referee," and you would recognise him. But I just had visions of our no baggage referee coming to take over, and this guy riding on a horse or whatever.
I think it needs because listen, there are levels of madness around this, and referees are accused of terrible things, right? Away from the field, away from the pitch. And I just think, some of it is fair. It's an incendiary environment right now. It is. I think VAR has only kind of made the spotlight on the referees more intense. I thought it would be less intense, but it's not.
Yeah, it should have helped.
It should have helped, but there's always going to be these decisions that drive people scatty. And like the issue here, and another issue here is that Scotland is an incredibly passionate football country, right? This stuff matters, and these decisions matter. And there's a lot of people going to create a lot of noise about decisions that go against the football team because this stuff counts in their lives.
It's almost like there's nothing else to moan about or to be upset about.
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's the whole point of this, like VAR, and I was saying to you earlier on, even though I'm a very, very old man, I still have quite a few years left before I can hang up my pencil. And I fear that I'm going to be spending them talking about VAR quite often. And that thought is just desperately grim. I think we've got away with it, and we talk about it on the radio a lot. And Kenny Mack runs the show on the Saturdays, and I'm going, Kenny, can we just, can we not just talk about VAR before the action starts? Can we just leave it? And
we try and do that every week. Yeah, we say let's not talk about it too much, but every week
you get sucked into the vortex.
Can't help it.
Yeah. And it's and we go round and round in circles, and it's difficult. And I know why we do it, but I don't know. I've found since VAR came in, it feels to me like we are in our shows. I don't know what it's like for you. We spend more time talking about VAR than we sometimes do talking about players and tactics and managers and all that kind of stuff. That's probably not an exaggeration, but sometimes it can feel that way.
Was it like that before with referee decisions though? Like if you go pre-VAR, did we spend as long talking about just like a bad decision on the park without VAR getting involved? I was trying to think about that the other day. Is it just we've given it a different name, but we're talking about the same thing
Well, do you know what has changed slightly, right? If a decision pre-VAR, if a decision went against Celtic or Rangers, we'd spend 5-6 days talking about it, right? We would.
Yeah.
Newspapers would have it. We'd be on the radio talking about it. It's great injustice. If it happened to Hibs or Hearts or Aberdeen or whoever else, it would be a one-day wonder, and it probably wouldn't be even a one day, because that is the nature of the beast in the media. The big clubs dominate.
Yeah.
And God forbid, if you're if it's happened to you and you're a Livingston fan or you're a St. Mirren fan, the coverage comes and goes. If it's the most horrible decision given against you, the coverage comes and goes in the blink of an eye. What's changed now with VAR is, I think, more of the clubs are getting more airtime, because the clubs can go to Hammond now and request a meeting, and they can stick up for themselves. So these stories linger longer now than they did before.
But you know what happens though? Because Hibs have sort of done that after the Aberdeen one, that handball.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they go, you know, that Limmy bit where they go, don't back down, double down. And
Yeah.
And it's worse the next time. Like they don't then go, we need to try and even this out. Like, I know that's not right necessarily, but you think they would be on more edge last night to go, actually, we made an arse of that one last week.
But I don't see.
I can't give them another one.
See, I don't think that they're not doing this deliberately. Like I hear
that last night. He seen it. He got told it was wrong, and he still. So that is a deliberate action to say, no, that's definitely a penalty. And it's everybody else. I spoke to Hearts fans at work today. They're all going, I don't know how we got that penalty last night. Like,
I know.
We're not even like doing it in a smug way like they normally do. Like a genuine conversation. And you think, how has he decided that? That's a deliberate choice, because he's been told you're wrong.
He has, and it's just, I just think it's a cock-up, not a conspiracy. And I know, as a Hibs fan, you'll think, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. But the alternative then is for me to think, right, these referees are conspiring against clubs. And I don't know why they would do that, because their professional reputation has been shredded. It is already shredded for some of them. Why would you deliberately go out and give a decision against the club? It just, I don't know. I mean, you could have unconscious bias and all that. I know and all that. Yeah, like,
he'll be back maybe on Saturday. We'll get in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know. I just think it's poor refereeing. It's poor judgment. Maybe it's a referee going, no, I'm going to stick by the decision because reversing it makes me look weak.
Yeah.
And then I will get assessed on that, and I've reversed my decision. So I'm going to be big. I'm going to look big and strong in here. I'm standing by this decision, even though maybe in the back of his head he's thinking he's wrong. Maybe he's 100% convinced he's right. I don't know. There's like, we look at these individual incidents with individual referees. It's bigger than that. You know, it's I think there's a crisis in referees, and you have other referees, say Bobby Madden, who's out with the profession now, on Instagram, analyzing each decision. The focus on these guys, and every time they get one wrong, like if I get something wrong with my work and I keep getting it wrong with my work, I kind of lose a bit of my confidence, right? These referees aren't automatons. If they're consistently getting it wrong, even though they don't go public on it, they know they've got it wrong. They're going out the next day thinking, Jesus Christ, I hope I don't make a balls of it today. You know, it has to be like.
But see, if you kept getting it wrong at your work, Tom, you'd be put on a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
To help you get better.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happens here.
But there aren't enough refs. There aren't enough of them. That's the problem. There's not enough referees out there. And there's certainly not enough good referees out there. Who'd be a referee? I couldn't imagine anything worse. You know?
No. Good money though.
Yeah, my son qualified as a referee, and for the next season at Easter Road, when we were sitting, anytime I moaned about a decision, I got put in my place. They were in the rules and all the rest of it.
In a headmaster style.
One of the worst things that ever happened to me. To move on for referees, one of the big news stories at Hibs this week, probably this year, was the AGM on Tuesday night, where the proposal for the Black Knight Football Club investment into Hibs, so 6 million initially for 25% of the club, that was approved by shareholders. Now, Tom, I'm hoping you're going to give us like a sort of an external objective view, because I know I'm at risk of being like an excited schoolboy with something like this. Just that the thought Hibs might turn into an actual good team. It's been a while. What did you make of it? Like in terms of like even that sort of the multi-club ownership model and outside investment coming in, how does that look to you as a non-Hibs fan?
I think it's for me, it looks broadly good news, and I can understand why you get excited. 6 million, because you've seen across the city, James Anderson shoveling money into Hearts, and the foundation of Hearts shoveling money into the club. Here is a genuine billionaire. We've had a few kind of pretendy billionaires in Scottish football over the years. This guy is a real one. So that's good. I like the fact that the mood music coming from Ben Kensel is that, okay, there'll be a bit of investment in players, but a chunk of it, we don't know how much improvement will be on infrastructure. Improvements in the training base, good news. Creation of a home for the Hibs women's team, good news. That's setting down roots. I think that's a wise use of this money rather than splurging it on Bojan Majowski, my earlier suggestion. So I think that's good. I am minded, and this is where I'm going to ask you guys, right? Because I'm looking at the HSL stuff, right? And I like the fact that they've created noise about this, that they've spoken about being disrespected, that they haven't, even if it was 15% of the club, that they haven't seemed to have any dialogue with the club over Bill Foley. I think fair play to them. I don't know how powerful they are. Well, 15%. I don't know how many people contribute to this 15%, but I would say fair play to them for expressing their anxiety over this and the lack of communication. I think that's a healthy situation, to be honest. That there's not everyone has got the pom-poms out for Bill Foley, that there is an element in the clubs going, hang on a second, why haven't this hasn't been explained to us? We've got 15%. What do you think of that?
Well, I think if you've got 15%, the club should have spoken to them, and they didn't. I'm not, and that might have allayed those fears, I guess. Like they might, but not speaking to them, I think it's a wee bit. I agree, it's disrespectful. That's the right word for it. I think because they were the second largest shareholder. I don't think they are anymore, but they were. Yeah. And obviously that's been diluted now to less than 7%. I think.
Yeah,
I think that's what. So it is disrespectful. Whether I agree with them voting against it or whatever it was that they've done, I know they said they never voted against the investment; they voted against the resolution. But I think it's the same thing. But I get the reason that they're saying it, because they've just been ignored, and it's not really. I wouldn't think it's the best way to influence people.
There is a distinction about what they voted against, though, because the two resolutions that they voted against, one of them stopped them buying shares, and they only exist to buy shares in the club. The HSL only exist to collect money to buy shares, and one of the resolutions asked them to waive their right to do that. So it's kind of like a turkey voting for Christmas. I kind of get why and it's because the investment was dependent on that resolution passing, that you can frame it as they voted against the investment, but it wasn't really that they were against the money coming in. It was against not being able to buy shares. And I think the other resolution was that to accept new articles, which would have meant there was drag-along rights. So if somebody wants to buy 80% of the club, everybody else has to sell the remaining shares to them. And that used to set at 90%. Okay. So it was another thing that they would have to sell all their shares. So it's a strange one, because it was definitely framed in the media that HSL were like, we don't want Bill Foley and the money, but I don't think that was necessarily the case.
Okay.
And it was also only 80 members that voted. So HSL has about well, up to 4,000. We have a bit of a disagreement, Colin, on how many the figure is, but I think
We don't know.
the email
Yeah.
just over 3,500 people on the database. Of those, 80 voted, and it was, I think, 70% against and 34, give or take. So
Okay.
we're not
Okay.
talking huge
So
numbers.
small
So,
numbers of fans.
yeah, so there's that context around the HSL bit. But you're right. I think it was good that people had a bit of scrutiny on the deal, and it wasn't just like you say, all pom poms and ushering them in with a give us your money and we'll accept anything that's coming our way.
And it's an entirely different situation to other situations in years gone by at other clubs, because the Gordons still have the majority shareholding. It's 60%, I think. Foley's coming in at 25%. So that's good. As long as all of a sudden Hibs don't become this kind of feeder club for Bournemouth and play in this transient world of players are coming and going. Great. I don't think that's the intention.
Kensal was at lengths to say there's no.
Yeah.
He used the phrase "there's no Bournemouth B." He said we don't have to take in or sell any player that we don't want to.
So that's good. So if you have reassurance that Foley is coming from a good place here, and that Hibs and the Gordons, who I have a lot of admiration for, still have the 60% shareholding, and that Ben Kensal is on top of the kind of, it doesn't become Bournemouth B, that what's not to like here? As I said before, I really think the HSL raising objections and new information and on Foley and on the whole wider issue is very healthy for the democracy of a club, right? I think it's very, very important contribution, whether you agree with them or not. I think that needed to happen. But I think it's good news. I hope it's good news, because the more money that goes into non-Old Firm teams, I'm all with that. I'm here for that all day long. I want to see, like, my football kind of reporting dream before I shuffle off this mortal coil would be to see and maybe to cover a non-Old Firm team winning the league.
Wait, you meant Hibs there? When you said
we're reading between the lines a wee bit here. That's what we're hearing.
I was forgetting my place there, boys. Hibs. Just edit that bit out and just put Hibs in instead. It would be brilliant, right? From a purely selfish point of view. No disrespect to Celtic or Rangers, none at all. But I think as a story, my God, what a story that would be. And I know I'm dreaming. I may as well dream here as in bed. But, I think it would just be a fantastic story. So the more Bill Foley's responsible guy coming in at just 6 million, it's not 600 million, but it will make a difference. I think the better, the more James Andersons, the better. I think it's good news,
I think this is the only way that clubs that are, the size of Hibs and Hearts or Aberdeen or even St Johnstone, who are getting talked about having an American owner interested in them. Is this the only way that the gap could get closed, do you think, or what would the alternative be?
I think, how will the gap get closed? Is it possible to close the gap? I think you have to look at European football, so that Hibs, say for Hibs' sake, you constantly qualify for group stage European football. And you build up, and the European football landscape is changing completely, and is more lucrative now from next season onwards, and God knows where it's going to go from that. But I don't think the money is going to become less. It's always going to become more. Hibs need to get into that regular group stage football in Europe. There's millions to be made from that. You invest it wisely. The big two in Glasgow don't invest wisely. The gap, and you spend wisely. You get a rough diamond from somewhere and you sell them off for 10 million. You keep doing that player trading model. So much has to go right. So much. I mean, it's just an improbable set of circumstances need to happen for that gap to close. The alternative is that Celtic and Rangers leave, but that's another day's work.
Back to 2 points for a win and playing each other twice. That would narrow the gap as well.
Jumpers for goalposts.
18 so we're pretty much out of time, Tom, but just so you mentioned player trading there, and I suppose we can't let you go without mentioning that John McGinn tweet. How many times has that been thrown back at you over the years?
So much I've started to retweet it myself. anytime he makes a half decent pass. It's great. I love the memes as well that people have done. They're very funny, from The Office, Ricky Gervais and stuff. Go get the Tom English tweet. I love all that. I will stand by it. I will stand by it to my dying day.
See, when you talk about that though, you just mentioned we need to start selling player trading for 10 million. That's one of the reasons we can't sell players that are worth more than they are, is because it gets the media, including that tweet there, like say he's only worth 1.5 million. Nobody will pay any more than that for him. He's not worth any more than that. But he was, and he is. And it's like we're held back by that. English players that aren't anywhere near as good as John McGinn go for more money than we sold them to Aston Villa for, because we talk our own game down.
Well, the problem there, right? And I say slightly tongue-in-cheek that I will stick with it till my dying day. But I think there was a large degree of truth in it, right? Because Celtic came in at 1.5 million, I think, at the time. And that was considered a low ball offer. I didn't see it necessarily as a low ball offer because Steve Bruce is on record as manager of Villa at the time, saying they got him for 2 million. That's what he says. So, and there was nobody else in the game for John McGinn. Bizarre as it might seem, there was nobody else. So 1.5 million can't, in the context of the player going for 2 million, be deemed, if Bruce is right, a low ball offer, right? Celtic should have paid whatever they needed to pay. The second part of my tweet was that he wouldn't get in the Celtic team or something like that, right? Jesus, lads, the abuse I've had over this. I mean, no, the Celtic midfield that season was Brown, who was a player of the year, Rogic, McGregor, Incham, who was probably his best season for Celtic, and Stuart Armstrong. Not a bad 5-man lineup there, McGinn was brilliant. And he would have been probably in the team, and I think to this day, Celtic regret not doing that deal. I probably to this day possibly regret sending that tweet out. The amount of hassle it's caused me. But they should have done the deal. But I think the most interesting thing about that is that Aston Villa, if Steve Bruce is right, got him for £2 million, which is birdseed.
We're still waiting on the sell-on fee.
Hibs banked on the sell-on fee.
Well, it was going to Man United for 50 million a few years ago. But I mean, but we're talking, geez, I don't know what he'd go for now. Not that Villa would have him be a. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. But he's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I enjoyed watching him playing for Hibs. I was thinking actually earlier on, again, my hapless journalism career. So I missed the famous Cup final. I was away in Ireland for that, right? So that was one of my lasting regrets that I wasn't there when Hibs finally did it. And I also missed, was it 2017 League Cup final? John Collins walking around the pitch. After he beat Kilmarnock. 2007. What did I say? 2007. It was a 5-1 against Killie. And I watched that, and I swear to God this is true. I'm not saying it just to butter you all up, right? That video, big regret that I don't know where the hell I was that day. I was in Scotland. I don't know why the hell I wasn't at the match. But the video of Collins walking around and Sunshine and Leeds, it is absolutely extraordinary. And that's just me watching it on my laptop. Being there must have been unreal. I mean, Sunshine and Leeds, again, from the heart, absolutely the best football song there is.
Yeah. Pat Nevin
Absolutely.
takes the credit. Pat Nevin took the credit for that
For the
when he was on
coverage.
here, saying that was it Dougie Donnelly in the studio back then?
Yes,
It would have been,
he was. He
And
was. Yeah.
they were meant to be going out to talk to back to the studio, and Pat Nevin says, "I'm not speaking. I want to hear Sunshine on the Roof."
Because Dougie in commentary says he's talking, and the camera goes on John Collins, and he says, "Let's just pause for a minute and listen to this." Oh, it's absolutely incredible. It's just the hairs in the back of my neck, even now, all these years later. It's so powerful.
What a great point to end the podcast then, I think. Tom, thanks so much for giving up your time tonight. We did say before we started recording that Graham Spears would come on and shifted opinion of him with a Hibs support, and I hope we've done the same for you tonight.
There's no chance. There's zero chance. The last thing I want, lads, is football fans, and there's no danger of it liking me, because that's when I'm going to get really worried.
Listen, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. No doubt we'll speak again on BBC at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And listen, great to be on it. And anytime. Best of luck to Hibs for the rest of the season.
Right, and thanks very much for listening. We will be back with a Derby episode, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink water, no.